Hello. I also would like to thank the organizing for bringing together this hybrid bunch of people, as I had the chance to talk in the coffee break, that we're all sort of historians of science, but not only or not quite, but we sort of come together in this interest. And I'm very happy to be invited. So I also took the idea of a workshop quite seriously and present a work in progress that come up while working with collections from university, the university collection of Utrecht University. And the basic idea behind it is that slides are a medium where you present a public image of yourself, right? It's not a private photo put in your private album. It's not a diary. It's really meant for public display. And I was wondering what kind of public image did the sciences produce in lectures and the slides. This is, as they were produced mostly in colonial settings, there are some images that are not okay today, or they haven't been that time either, but anyway. So excursions, to start with, are an exception in the scientific practice, right? It's not lecturing, it's not organizing your samples, it's really going to the field. So it has, especially in the 19th century, a lot of adventure, of being out there, of it's an event, and it's been reported like this also in local and national newspapers. So when, at least in the Netherlands, when there was a scientific expedition, the local newspaper would say, well, our researchers go on expedition, and there would be detailed description. And from the lantern slide sets they produced from the expeditions, there was also usually a very long newspaper report on what they presented in these public lectures. This is the collection of Utrecht University Museum. They have about 30,000 slides from various disciplines, and I will show you 4 slide sets of excursions, 2 from botany, 1 from geology, and 1 from astronomy. And my research intern, Aurora, who's sitting in the back, did research on veterinary slides. So if you want to know more about that, you can ask her in the break. Most slides are not of excursions, of course. They are like dull chemical formula, pathology, corpora of landscapes, and the excursions are only a small part of them, but I nevertheless think it's worthwhile. Okay, let's turn to the botanists. To date, I found these excursions being documented. This is the only image that's not a slide, but it's the Botanist Club celebrating the 200,000 sample in their collections. I love the photo. But all other images are really made from lantern slides, even though they have been digitized in various ways. And what I will present, I will compare 2 slide sets from researchers to Suriname, which at that time was a colony of the Netherlands. Here we go. So Professor Puller went to Suriname in 1920. Suriname is in South America. And I will just show you how the sample looked like, right? So you have it's botany, so you have botanical phenomena, more botanical phenomena, vegetation, a researcher in the field, people, here you see the researchers getting to the mountain, and you see the equipment in the right already. So this is actually one of my favorite photos, because you don't need a course in visual analysis to analyze really what's happening here. I couldn't identify what kind of flag it is, but you climb the mountain, you conquer it, you make a photo, and you sit leisurely in your tropical garment. Okay, anyway. You also have photos of life in the tent camps. So when you look at what the corpus of image of the scientist that's in the slides that looks like, you get a lot of images of people that are not directly related to botanical phenomena. And luckily I found a report in a Dutch newspaper reporting on a lecture given by Professor Pulle on his expedition. And because I assume not everyone's fluent in Dutch, I translated it sort of to English. So it's a part of it. It's really 2 columns long. And it reads like, yesterday evening, Professor Pulle, professor at Utrecht, gave a lecture with transparencies, which is a historical term, at least in the Netherlands, used quite often, about his expedition to Suriname for members of the Rotterdam division of the Society for Common Benefits. Society for Common Benefits was a general uplift through education association, very influential in the Netherlands in the 19th and 20th century. They promoted like bourgeois value. So, and then talking about our growing knowledge on Suriname, so our growing knowledge, he mentioned the uncertainty over the extract frontier line between British Guinea and Dutch Guinea, which will be solved by arbitrage. By using a very beautiful and numerous collection of slides, information on the population of the colonies, its rivers, geological structure, the flora of the riverbanks, riffles, and tropical forest was given. Many exceptional facts about the population, and then he uses colonial terms for the indigenous population, which I will not translate, were given as well. So here you actually, what I find in the images as well as in the public lecture about it, it's not just about botanical facts, it's not just about vegetation, but it's about the researcher acquiring knowledge against the odds. The colonial context is mentioned very explicitly, but and he, the researcher, positions itself within. Yeah, and it's a talk sort of targeted as a general audience, right? So this is the public image of this field that this researcher sort of created with means of the lantern slides. 15 years later, same discipline, same location, different researcher also went to Suriname, and I will show you some slides of his slide set. So you have vegetation, more. This is one of the rare images where you see people, so it's a set of about 60 slides. This is the only other image in which you see people in the slide set. You also have graphs. And so when you look at what's the corpus or the type of images that comes in this slide set of an excursion, it looks different than the first one. He also gave a lecture that was reported on in a newspaper. This is a colonial newspaper from Suriname in Dutch language. And it's also reports. It says, last month, Dr. Lenyo gave a lecture at the Utrecht Association for Biologists over the above-mentioned subject. The herbs were not maintained. The speaker used slides to illustrate the different vegetation images. The waterfalls and riffles were not forgotten, neither was the Volksberg, which forms a kind of pilgrim's place for every botanical visitor on this overseas territory. So in the images as well as in what's reported about the lecture, it's really more about the botanical facts, not so much about the society around it or the context. It's also a lecture given to a specialist association, right? So a very different public image that this researcher sketches about his work. Okay, we change disciplines and go to a geologist. There was also an exhibition 1933 from Professor Rutte. I will show you the images. So you see geological formations, people within geological formations, probably the exhibition, the excursionists. photo that does not show a geological formation. And this was actually the favorite image of my supervisor. It was in the newsletter. Here the title of the slide is called vastgelopen, so being stuck. And they have to take out the car from being stuck in the mud. But you also have geological formations, of course. And this is the last. So when you look at the repertoire of images in this slide, so the excursion is very prominent, right? You see the different steps of what do you do in field work and sort of selfies, and you also document the odds of doing field work. Also found an article on this in a Dutch newspaper where the professor gave a lecture to the Royal Geographical Society of the Netherlands, of course. And here I will read it out on students to Cuba. And he says, it is of great importance for students in geology to go on field trips in tropical countries. Of all tropical countries, the Antilles are the cheapest and most easy to reach from here, meaning the Netherlands. They have the advantage to be limited territories with a tropical but not hypertropical climate. From a technical and pedagogical perspective, these islands are ideal research objects. In the second part of the evening, a number of slides were projected that showed landscapes and vegetation, fauna, cultures, people and their housing, railways and streets, and life in the research camp. So here again, you have a different kind of public image. So it feels like the research is campaigning to get funding for field trips by stressing the need. So you don't stress the research value or of the excursion, but you stress really, you need to do it again and again and again because there will be more students who will benefit from field trips. And the Royal Geographical Society of the Netherlands actually was one of the biggest funders of excursions and expeditions. So it might make sense. But I find it very interesting that the image repertoire and the way it's represented in the newspaper corresponds very much. Okay. Astrophysics also went on excursions. And the Utrecht Department of Astrophysics was very much into researching phenomena related to the sun, so that was their specialty. So they went to solar eclipses, and well, you have to go where the solar eclipses will not come to you. Usually not. I will start with the 1954 exhibition to Figeholm in Sweden. And of course, we are now in a different time period, right? We are in after World War II. It's the Cold War. Well, they are in the Baltic Sea. And solar eclipses, just as today, they were already media events. There is a lot of public interest in solar eclipses, so there are a lot of newspaper reports about everything related to solar eclipses. And one anecdote about this one is that the solar eclipse went from southern Norway to Sweden to the former Soviet Union, and all over Sweden it was cloudy, but in Gotland they had good weather conditions, so they were the only ones to produce usable images. And this also reported quite often in reports that researchers are sort of anxious. Are there clouds? Are there not clouds? Okay. And also they had very complicated apparatus for filming and photographing, and it's also described in detail which kind of cameras they use. And okay, but I show you the slides that are in the archives. So the overview of the solar eclipse. They are actually in the order, so the packing, and in the background you see the Utrecht Institute for Astrophysics, which is now closed. Expedition team, setting up the equipment on site. A lot of images of researchers with equipment, also from different research institutes. This is called Visitors' Day. So even before the eclipse was taken, they had sort of, so now we are public looking at a public meeting on slides. I wonder when you present it in a lecture to an audience, if the public sees itself in the image, sort of. But okay, they did valorization on site already. Okay. More images. And this is called Freudestemming, so happy feelings of joy. And I imagine that it was taken directly after the solar eclipse when all the footage was taken and was successful. And then the set of images that were taken. And this is the last image where they visit a tourist place in Gotland. Okay. So here you have a different narrative, or you could construct a narrative. I didn't find a newspaper article on this expedition, curiously, even though I think it would be pretty easy to construct a public lecture on how we first packed our stuff, then we set it up, and then it was very... Everywhere were clouds, but okay, but in the end it worked, we're happy, and this is our result. So you could easily make a public lecture from it that's very accessible, but I didn't find it. I think because of time I will not show you the 1901 exhibition, but I have images of that too. But so where I want to go to with this this project is what I found. You could use the slide sets good to bridge like the traditional university history or history of science, where you use material from the university archives and material and contrast it with the public image by using materials that's been published in the public sphere, sort of, to rewrite or bring together the both historiographies. What's apparent, or what's evidence, that science has used the medium of lantern slides to shape a public image of science and scientists. And of course, the image or the genre of expeditions is special run, right? You don't shape public image by formulas or pathology so much than that with the excursions. All excursions from media events. And what I also found, they frame themselves as being really tough guys, mostly guys indeed, not exclusively, but in the fields outside of the ivory tower. And by doing so, when we take the aspect of performance, which was also mentioned in the first talk, that usually it was the professor or the leader of the excursion who performed the slide sets, you can't have more authority. You're authority in the subject and you're an eyewitness. So you also present yourself towards the audience, towards your colleagues, and towards the research object, and that can happen very different ways, and I would like to look more into that. You don't see really slides of failed experiments, which is maybe not surprising, because you would not like to present blurry images. And questions I would like to look into is also like who financed the expeditions, and is the relation between people who financed it and the public lectures they gave, and what narratives reported in the newspapers, and do the researchers address the colonial context of the research they do, something that's new in the Netherlands. They recently discovered they had colonies, and that colonialism is an issue maybe. So this is the way I would like to develop the project. I'm very curious to hear what you think of it. So, thank you.